In his previous life, Zhang Ping had been a dedicated member of the rescue team, meeting his end in a tragic accident. His final moments were filled with the chaos and urgency of a failed rescue operation, with the shouts of his comrades and the screech of metal still vivid in his memory. But death wasn't the end for Zhang Ping. Upon dying, he found himself transported to a fantastical world teeming with mutated and awakened beings, where magic and mystery intertwined with daily life. This new world was both breathtaking and bewildering, and at first, he felt overwhelmed by the surreal environment. However, he soon discovered he had also awakened a unique power, the ability to create a contract gem. This gem, once voluntarily accepted by a target, would grant Zhang Ping control over their life, soul, and consciousness. Although this power had great potential, it came with a significant drawback that reduced its effectiveness. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted when Su Jinjiao called out to him, asking what he was doing staring at a gem like that. Being his childhood friend, Zhang Ping seized the opportunity to joke with her, asking if she wanted a candy, because if so, he could give her this crystal he was holding. Su Jinjiao, well aware of his intentions, knew exactly what he was up to and had no desire to be controlled by anyone, especially her childhood friend. Of course, Zhang Ping knew what her answer would be, it was just a joke. But this playful interaction highlighted the main drawback of his power: the creature must be fully informed and voluntarily accept the contract for it to work, otherwise, even consuming the gem would have no effect. Fortunately, Zhang Ping had transmigrated into this body just in time, and his psychological resilience from his previous life had allowed him to persevere, finding strength in his determination to make the most of his new abilities. Meanwhile, Su Jinjiao sensed that Zhang Ping's determination was wavering, and as his childhood friend, she couldn't let that happen. So she tried to motivate him in the most physical way possible, as a close friend would, ruffling his hair affectionately and urging him not to give up so easily, talking about how vast the world was and how surely there would be creatures willing to let him control them. Zhang Ping dismissed her encouragement, arguing that it was easy for her to say, but besides him, who else would be willing to be controlled by someone? After saying these words, a sudden idea struck him. He realized he had never tried using the gem on himself. He wondered why he hadn't thought of this before and decided to give it a try, even though it seemed crazy. So, with a mischievous smile, he told himself, "What the heck," and began eating the crystal as if the feds were about to confiscate it. This horrified Su Jinjiao, who thought he was about to cancel his subscription to life. Her heart raced as she watched him, unable to predict what would happen next. To her astonishment, a green aura enveloped Zhang Ping, signaling that something extraordinary was happening. The aura pulsed with energy, emitting an ethereal glow around him that seemed to dance with life. As the aura dissipated, Su Jinjiao, with tears in her eyes, rushed to check if Zhang Ping was okay. He reassured her, saying he was fine, which she appreciated, but asked him never to scare her like that again. As it was already late, she decided it was time to return to the dormitory. Before leaving, she informed him that she had to report to the patrol team the next morning and didn't need to wait for her. Zhang Ping smiled, proud yet sad. This meant that Su Jinjiao was about to graduate, having mastered all her theoretical knowledge and ready for real combat. Joining the patrol team to protect their homeland had always been her dream, and now she was about to achieve it. This realization filled him with pride but also a sense of loss, knowing they would see each other less. The patrol team's rigorous schedule and dangerous missions meant their paths would rarely cross. Su Jinjiao knew this too, so she turned, smiling, and told him not to be discouraged, because when he became stronger, they could work together. Zhang Ping laughed, doubting that would happen. His seemingly useless ability had relegated him to the profession of a farmer by the school. He even joked that maybe he should head to the countryside to farm. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on him, once a revered rescuer, now a potential farmer. Despite everything, he found it hard to say goodbye to her, the only person he had managed to connect with since he transmigrated. He had grown attached to her and wanted to give her a sincere hug. Unexpectedly, the green aura materialized and somehow moved his body on its own. He hugged Su Jinjiao in a heartfelt gesture, surprising them both. The warmth of the hug conveyed emotions that words couldn't express, leaving them both momentarily breathless. Embarrassed, Su Jinjiao quickly pulled away, unable to handle the intense feelings. She ran off, but not before Zhang Ping told her to take care. She turned back with a cheerful smile, promising she would and wishing him the same. Watching her leave, Zhang Ping knew he would treasure that moment forever, a truly emotional scene he wouldn't trade for anything in the world. After Su Jinjiao left, Zhang Ping found himself alone, contemplating the strange events that had just occurred. His body had hugged her on its own, which made him wonder if he had given a subconscious order or if it was just a coincidence. These questions unsettled him, compelling him to determine the extent of his control over his own body. Determined to uncover the truth, Zhang Ping sought a secluded place to experiment, where he quickly ordered himself to perform various actions. He started with simple tasks, like raising his arm or clenching his fist, and gradually moved on to more complex movements, like performing acrobatic flips and intricate martial arts poses. After several practice sessions, he lay face down on the ground, exhausted and drenched in sweat. Despite his fatigue, he had made a significant discovery: he could make his body perform almost any action, as long as it didn't exceed the capabilities of a normal human. Actions like flying or transforming into another species were beyond his reach. Additionally, Zhang Ping realized that his body could mimic actions based on memory, even those he had never practiced before. This meant that, theoretically, he could master various martial arts effortlessly, as long as his physical abilities met the necessary standards. This newly discovered potential filled him with determination to improve his physical condition, knowing that by doing so, he would become stronger. However, despite all this, one question remained to be verified. Zhang Ping decided to test this further by giving a specific command to his body, and the next day, when he opened his eyes, he found himself disoriented and confused about his whereabouts. To his surprise, he found himself in the cafeteria with a bowl of rice in front of him, which confused him even more. But the pain in his legs quickly reminded him that he had ordered himself to run in the morning before sleeping. His body had actually gone for a run while he was unconscious. This realization thrilled Zhang Ping. His hypothesis from the previous day was correct: his body could execute commands even when his brain was unconscious. It was as if he had unlocked an autopilot feature, an incredibly powerful ability. However, this seemed too good to be true. Looking around, he checked if anyone had noticed his unusual activity, but everyone seemed too distracted by the appearance of Luo Shui. Shui was the school beauty, often considered a goddess by her peers. But something seemed strange about this encounter, and Zhang Ping quickly noticed it was unusually early that morning. According to his memory, she usually didn't get up this early. What seemed like a trivial detail turned out to be a creepy reality. Zhang Ping's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized the beautiful Shui was hiding a monstrous secret. She was actually a monstrous fox in disguise, devouring everything without mercy. The scene was straight out of a nightmare, and Zhang Ping could do nothing but wonder why no one else seemed to notice. While she continued eating and the others cheered her on as if she was just strolling by, Zhang Ping, paralyzed by terror, began to sweat profusely. He struggled to make sense of all this, and unfortunately, his reaction attracted the unwanted attention of this monster. With the same smile, she approached him, her worries and voice identical to Shui's. Despite this, Zhang Ping could see through the illusion, which didn't help his situation. Fortunately, as a transmigrator who had experienced 2 lifetimes of wisdom, he knew the importance of staying calm in the face of danger. So, even when the monster came closer and started asking if he was alright in an attempt to test him, Zhang Ping remained serene. Zhang Ping kept his composure and casually responded that he was fine, that there was nothing to worry about. Before the monster could respond, he excused himself, saying he had a class to attend. This nonchalant behavior made the monster doubt her perception, believing she had mistaken the scent of fear coming from Zhang Ping. As he walked away, he felt a wave of relief, but a troubling question still lingered in his mind: why were there mutated monsters in the school? No one else had noticed, or was he hallucinating? Either way, he knew he had to report this to a teacher immediately. Rushing towards the teacher's room, he encountered another horrifying sight. The teacher had also transformed into a monster and was attacking a student. Panic gripped Zhang Ping, who fled as fast as he could, finally finding refuge on the school rooftop, where he could freely express his frustrations. He was convinced something was terribly wrong and refused to believe it was all in his head. This place was hell on earth. As he was venting his thoughts, the crystal he had consumed earlier fell out of his pocket. He realized he could only see the mutated beasts after having eaten the gem. Desperate to return to normal, he decided to consume more of it, hoping to reverse the effects, but the result was the opposite of what he wanted. Consuming more of the gem only intensified its effects. Then a system window appeared, evaluating a nearby puddle of red substance. After successfully evaluating it, the system played images of what had happened for that red substance to be there, showing one of the staff members being attacked by a monstrous fox, which startled Zhang Ping and made him jump off the bench. But the most intriguing part was how he had awakened an evaluation ability simply by devouring the gem. This seemed too good to be true, so he decided to test it by evaluating himself. To his surprise, it worked. A system interface appeared, displaying his stats window and confirming that he had indeed awakened a new ability by devouring gems. He could even see the skills he had gained, like the level 1 contract gem he initially obtained. What surprised him most was that his ability had levels, a clear indication that he could become stronger. Additionally, the evaluation ability allowed him to see his own values and evaluate targets, with success rates depending on the power difference between both parties. With these discoveries, he knew he shouldn't waste this opportunity and decided to return to his normal activities to avoid raising suspicion. As he continued with his day, he analyzed his current situation. First, he had become his own summoned beast and contractor. Second, only he could control himself, meaning his body and mind were immune to external interference. Third, because of this, no spell was effective against him, allowing him to see the true forms of the mutated beasts. Fourth, these mutated beasts were actually normal foxes with high levels, and as a level 1, he couldn't face them. Fifth, the cognitive distortion ability allowed the beasts to devour people openly without others noticing, making it seem like two students were just talking. Speaking of mind control abilities, he remembered that his Hincho's ability was also mental. She might have a way to help, which made him smile. Having someone by his side would really ease things, so he decided to look for her after school. As soon as classes ended, Zhang Ping hurried to where his Hincho was, eager to share his discoveries and seek her help. But as he walked through the streets of Pearl City, he realized that the gravity of the situation was greater than he initially thought. These monstrous foxes weren't confined to the school, they were also roaming freely outside. The idea of these creatures lurking everywhere haunted him as he rushed to the patrol team's headquarters, desperate for answers. Upon arrival, he found an imposing structure, a symbol of authority and protection. Its grandeur offered a ray of hope amid his growing fear. He quickly entered and was greeted by a beautiful receptionist with a warm smile, ready to assist him. Zhang Ping asked to see his Hincho, who had probably arrived that day. The receptionist was kind, but even with her sweet smile, Zhang Ping could see through her. The disgusting smell, the horrendous mask made from her victim's skin that she was trying to imitate, and her enormous body towering over him made it clear that she was undoubtedly one of the monstrous foxes. He couldn't say anything, he couldn't react, he couldn't do anything. This was mentally exhausting, so he first sat down and tried to process this horrible realization. Even the patrol team had been infiltrated, which meant that even high-level awakeners couldn't see through the fox's illusions, which was deeply alarming. With this, his resolve to find his Hincho strengthened, clinging to the hope that she remained untouched by the corruption that seemed to permeate everything else. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long, as his Hincho quickly appeared and approached him with a question, asking why the sudden visit. This made him get up and greet her, but instead of revealing what he had learned, he simply told her that he was worried about how she was adapting to her new role and had come to check on her. His Hincho assured him that she was fine and introduced him to her team, saying they were taking good care of her. This should have been comforting, but Zhang Ping's eyes betrayed him, showing only deep sadness, an emotion his Hincho misinterpreted as jealousy or the fear of being forgotten by his childhood friend. She quickly addressed this, promising him that he didn't have to worry. She swore to work hard and become strong, aiming to fight the mutated beasts and avenge her parents in the future. And if he really missed her so much, she could recommend him to the patrol team, as they were short-staffed lately, so getting in would be easy. But Zhang Ping knew better. His powers, although unique, weren't suitable for combat, so he politely declined the offer, thanking her. Seeing that she seemed to be adapting well, Zhang Ping decided not to bother her anymore. He waved goodbye with a smile, but behind that smile was agony, despair, and regret. The Hincho he once knew was gone, replaced by that damned demonic fox, like everyone else. The worst part was that he couldn't let himself react for fear of giving himself away. As Zhang Ping left the building, his mind buzzed with anger and disbelief. He muttered under his breath, wondering what kind of joke this was. Wasn't the patrol team supposed to be the strongest in Pearl City? How the heck had they been completely wiped out? Even his Hincho had arrived today, and they had already taken her. The only person who meant anything to him in this strange world was gone. Whose sick fantasy was this, reincarnating him only to snatch away someone precious in an instant, without even a way to save her, leaving him with only vengeance as his option? These questions filled his mind, but no one answered. It seemed he would be alone in this fight, as the monsters had infiltrated the entire city. Everyone in Pearl City was their cattle, including him. But this wouldn't stop him, there was too much hatred in his blood to stop now, so Zhang Ping pressed on. After a few hours of intense concentration, he managed to uncover crucial information using his evaluation technique. First, he learned that most of the monstrous foxes ranged from intermediate to high levels. Specifically, levels 1 to 9 were elemental, 10 to 19 were intermediate, 20 to 29 were high, and 30 to 39 were advanced. Still, even a patrol team with many high-level awakeners couldn't match their strength. This revelation was terrifying. Second, he discovered that the fox that killed Sue was exceptionally strong. His instincts warned him that trying to evaluate it might reveal his location, suggesting it could be an advanced or even a king-level awakener, starting at level 40. This explained why these monstrous foxes could defeat much stronger awakeners. Third, unlike ordinary mutated beasts, the demonic foxes possessed high intelligence. They were experts at disguising themselves, allowing them to blend in with humans and live among them. But that was just on the surface. Beneath their cunning facades was a deadly threat, capable of sowing chaos and destruction undetected. Fourth, these foxes always prioritized targets with much greater strength or high social status, and the rest would simply be a reserve food source for them. Facing a demonic fox head-on was a death sentence. This knowledge was chilling but necessary, guiding Zongping's strategy to deal with these creatures. Despite this knowledge, Zongping couldn't just sit by and watch innocent citizens die, especially after what they did to his Jin Zhao. The memory of her transformation fueled his determination. He needed to become stronger, not just for himself but for the sake of everyone in Pearl City. A week later, at 3 in the morning, Zongping was already awake. His body had adapted to the rigorous training schedule, requiring less rest as his physique strengthened. He had been training diligently, pushing his limits every day. In the last few days, he managed to increase his level by 1, and besides physical training, he also generated and consumed gems daily, hoping to gain strength or talents like before. However, since obtaining the evaluation technique, the gems he generated had become colorless and ineffective. This had been a frustrating setback, but today he finally produced a gem with color. Though the color made him lose his appetite just by looking at it, he knew he couldn't be picky, so he pushed aside his thoughts, hoping this time it would have some effect. And so, he ate the gem, and as expected, he felt an enormous aura filling him, indicating he had indeed gained another ability. He quickly opened his status window to check. It was a new passive talent called Night Walker. This talent granted him night vision, significantly reduced presence during the night, a considerable increase in movement speed, reduced body weight, and complete invisibility when in shadows. This was a fantastic passive talent that would allow him to investigate at night undetected. Additionally, his contract gem ability had leveled up, making him wonder if it was related to his own level. If this were the case, each time he leveled up, he would awaken a new talent. This realization filled him with excitement, as it meant he could become invincible. With this new determination, Zongping felt there was no time to waste. He would continue training immediately, and since it was still night, he could test his new talent right away. Moments later, Zongping found himself running on the track field, his newly improved vision making everything around him crystal clear, even in the dim light. With this, he noticed a peculiar ring lying beside the track, its unusual appearance prompting him to stop his training and examine it closely. The ring turned out to be an assassination ring, designed to allow its wearer to move undetected, making all life forms unconsciously ignore them. Zongping knew such an item couldn't be discarded randomly, so he used his evaluation ability to discover more about it. After several attempts, he succeeded, obtaining information about its history and its previous owner. Through his vision, Zongping saw the demonic fox disguised as Su and another figure who seemed to be the owner of the ring. Convinced that he was the only one who could see through these foxes' illusions, Zongping initially thought the ring's owner might be one of Luosu's rivals. However, he quickly dismissed this idea, remembering that Luosu was an orphan with a gentle personality. There was no way she could make enemies with that kind of demeanor. So, there was only one possibility left. Besides him, there was someone else in Pearl City fighting these monsters. But his thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the sight of the demonic fox emerging from behind the walls. Thanks to his passive skills, Zongping remained undetected and managed to escape the scene unnoticed. The fox seemed to be searching for the ring and, realizing it was missing, became suspicious. There was definitely someone here, but no presence at all. If they could escape from a monster like him, then they had to be at least an intermediate-level awakener or higher. It seemed he would have to report this to His Royal Highness. Hearing the fox mutter this, it became clear that the foxes had deliberately left the ring as bait. But it would be more suspicious if he tried to return it, so he decided to keep it for now. At 5:36 in the morning, Zongping returned to his apartment, reflecting on recent events and the object he had acquired. The ring not only increased his strength but also provided additional advantages. It seemed things were getting interesting, but that's just what he thought. Things were about to get complicated. Fortunately, there was an intervention. An ethereal being began calling his name, which startled him completely out of his chair. Still in shock, Zhang Ping was more concerned with identifying the source of the voice. In response, the specter had no choice but to use its powers to calm him and warn him that his enemies were already in the building, moving in groups prepared to attack him. At 5:40 in the morning, the demonic foxes had entered his room, and Zhang Ping was in his pajamas, lying in bed, sleeping. The opponents stealthily entered Zhang Ping's room, surrounding him with predatory smiles. They were eager to test if he was really the high-level individual they suspected. Charging their attack, they prepared to annihilate him in one strike. But to their astonishment, even when the attack was mere inches from his face, Zhang Ping remained in a deep, carefree sleep, completely oblivious to the danger. He showed no signs of awareness or fear, not even a flicker of response, which made the intruders doubt he was the one who had taken the ring. If he had, he wouldn't be sleeping so peacefully, he would have sensed the danger and fought for his life. Moreover, the leader of the foxes couldn't sense the presence of the ring anywhere in the room, convincing her even more that they had the wrong person. So, she retracted her attack and signaled her subordinates to retreat. This decision puzzled and frustrated the subordinates, especially since they were sure Zhang Ping was the culprit because he usually went for a run every morning, but today he hadn't, indicating something was wrong. But Mama Fox wouldn't tolerate that attitude, especially after she had already made her verdict. It seemed her subordinates were getting too comfortable challenging her, so she glared at them with deadly eyes and made it clear that she had decided this trash was not a threat. Besides, Zhang had started his morning exercise routine a week ago, and according to human nature, most tend to get inspired to do something only to abandon it later and return to their comfort zone. This was nothing more than useless fodder, and they wouldn't waste resources on such trivial beings. And if any of them dared to question her judgment again, they would be her next meal. Her threat hung in the air, and her subordinates quickly bowed in obedience, promising not to challenge her authority again. As the foxes retreated, Zhang Ping began to regain consciousness slowly. He felt the oppressive presence in the room clear and knew they had left. Then, cautiously, he spat out the ring he had hidden in his mouth and took a deep breath. The experience had been terrifying, and his heart pounded in his chest, but he was grateful to be alive. His gamble had paid off. He knew he couldn't overpower the foxes at his current level, but using his unique ability to force himself into a convincing sleep, he had managed to trick them into believing he had nothing to do with the ring. Reflecting on recent events, Zhang Ping remembered hearing Jin Zhao's voice, which disheartened him, but he quickly dismissed it as an illusion, a trick his mind played to cope with the situation. He couldn't afford to let his emotions cloud his judgment or interfere with his mission of vengeance, so he resolved to suppress his feelings to focus solely on becoming stronger and avenging Jin Zhao. However, he knew he had to be cautious with his training to avoid arousing the monstrous fox's suspicions, so he decided to pretend to live his daily routine as usual for now. And so he did. Zhang Ping headed to the cafe for breakfast like nothing had happened. While enjoying his meal, he overheard some shocking gossip. The patrol team had found a body split in half near the school. The body belonged to the infamous Black Star of Death, the most feared assassin in Pearl City, who had once gravely injured the former lord of the city. This news intrigued Zhang Ping, who speculated that the man in white, the owner of the ring, might have been the Black Star of Death. If even the deadliest assassin in the city had been defeated, it underscored the terrifying strength of the fox disguised as Lu Xiu. The public display of the body suggested that the assassin wasn't just a regular human but a member of a secret organization opposing the foxes. This act was probably intended to send a message and provoke a response from their opponents, and Zhang Ping couldn't allow that because this secret organization might be his only hope to eradicate the monsters. He felt the need to warn them about the true nature of their enemy and their plans. But before that, he had to ensure his own safety by finding equipment to defend himself. With this in mind, after classes ended, he decided to go straight to the market in search of a blacksmith shop. Upon arrival, he discovered that the most popular blacksmith was also run by foxes, but seeing that this was just a low-level fox, he took the opportunity to use his appraisal skill. His initial attempts failed, but his persistence paid off when his appraisal skill leveled up after 100 uses. His elementary grade skill was promoted to an intermediate level. With this upgrade, Zhang Ping could now identify the growth potential of his opponents, and the blacksmith in front of him had the growth potential of a side character, with no future of becoming stronger. However, his level still exceeded Zhang Ping's, sitting at 15. So, he decided it was better to leave the place before the fox got suspicious and focus on his priority, finding another shop not controlled by the monsters. Moments later, Zhang Ping arrived at the second blacksmith shop, where there seemed to be a commotion inside. He decided to investigate. As he approached, he saw a thug intimidating a defenseless old man, brandishing a sword like it was a luxury item the old man desperately needed to buy. The swindler even offered a discount due to the old man's appearance. What disrespect! But the old man knew well what he was doing. He had been in the business much longer than that scammer, so he played along, pretending to misunderstand while blowing smoke in the blonde's face in a display of subtle defiance. This quickly enraged the swindler, and like a true cheat, he began lashing out at his victim, accusing him of incompetence. Luckily, before the situation could escalate further, Zhang Ping decided to intervene. He stepped forward, took the swindler's weapon, and used his appraisal skill. To his surprise, the sword was even more useless than he had anticipated. Not only was its quality mediocre, but it had also been broken and poorly repaired, rendering it completely useless. Seeing Zhang Ping's reaction, the blonde knew his deceit had been uncovered, so he tried to snatch the sword back. But in his haste, he broke the already fragile sword in two. Still, the blonde, with his victim mentality, desperately tried to save his reputation. He immediately blamed Zhang Ping for what happened to the sword, while trying to paint himself as the good guy in the situation. Now, feeling morally superior, he promised to teach Zhang Ping a lesson so he would never mess with Master Ma's direct disciple from the Shinji martial arts school again. Because they were about to try Ma Shinji's special, the blonde lunged at Zhang Ping half-naked, bouncing off the walls with incredible speed to confuse him. After that, multiple afterimages appeared around Zhang Ping, creating the illusion that he would attack from all angles. But unfortunately for him, Zhang Ping already had his appraisal skill activated. He quickly identified the real blonde and slapped him back to reality with ease. The blonde, stunned and humiliated, still accused Zhang Ping of lacking martial ethics. It seemed this guy wasn't right in the head, so Zhang Ping evaluated his condition. To his surprise, this fool had a useless skill. That explained why the guy thought he was winning. His martial arts skill allowed him to use any move, and they all came with impressive special effects, but only the user could see them. And the excessive use of this skill submerged the user in their own world, making them unable to escape it. This skill was like a low-quality demon hunter. Seeing this, Zhang Ping felt a bit sorry for the fool. It seemed he had also been scammed by Master Ma. So Zhang Ping turned around, considering the blonde no longer a threat. But this guy didn't know when to quit and seized the moment to launch a sneak attack. And then he got another round of punches from Zhang Ping. With that, the blonde now lay on the ground, defeated. His reputation shattered and his ego crushed, the blonde retreated with his tail between his legs. Meanwhile, the old man remained seated, seemingly unperturbed by the chaos unfolding in front of him. Nothing could stop him from enjoying his moment. He was so relaxed that he almost seemed to be in another world, savoring his cigar for the umpteenth time. Suddenly, another person appeared, visibly irritated by the commotion in her shop. She had been out for just a moment and returned to find a half-naked pervert sprawled in front of her place. Addressing the blonde, she asked if he wanted to leave on his own or needed help to get out. Recognizing the threat, the blonde shot off. As Zhang Ping prepared to leave as well, the red-haired woman blocked his way and ordered him to stay. She wanted to talk to him. Zhang Ping, curious, agreed to stay and asked what she wanted to talk about to mentally prepare himself. The redhead got straight to the point. She introduced herself as someone who struggled to survive every day while caring for her uncle, who had become confused and despondent after his daughter's disappearance. Seeing a healthy and capable man like Zhang Ping, she offered an opportunity he couldn't pass up. This immediately piqued Zhang Ping's interest. However, reality doesn't always meet expectations, and this was no exception. The redhead was actually offering him a job as a blacksmith in her shop. She needed someone to help take care of her uncle and run the shop. The job came with food, lodging, and a salary, of course. Zhang Ping immediately accepted, not because a soft melon had stuck to his face, but because learning the blacksmithing skill would save him a lot of money on equipment in the future. Plus, the modest appearance of the shop suggested it was less likely to be attacked by foxes soon. With this, he expressed his agreement enthusiastically, declaring that he was fully motivated to become the king of blacksmiths, which delighted the redhead, who gave him a hearty slap on the back, inadvertently reducing his health to 1, given that her hands were as heavy as a rock from being a blacksmith. It seemed his days in the blacksmith shop would be a long and arduous experience alongside this redhead. A few days later, the blacksmith shop was busier than ever since Zhang Ping's arrival. The temperature in the shop was high, and Zhang Ping, drenched in sweat and nervous, asked Sister Ku, the redhead, if what they were doing was okay. She assured him it was and encouraged him to keep going. And, to clear up any misunderstandings, they were deeply immersed in blacksmith training. Sister Ku was teaching Zhang Ping her exclusive technique, the dough-mixing forging method. This method required the blacksmith to knead the materials like dough, ensuring a complete blend of the ingredients. Seeing that Zhang Ping was mastering the technique, Sister Ku decided to leave him to get the mold from the storage. Before leaving, she reminded him to use the fuel in the nearby bucket and keep the fire burning. Zhang Ping nodded at her instructions but got confused when he saw 2 barrels of materials next to the forge. When the fire started to die down, he rushed to keep it from going out. He threw the material into the furnace and added fuel. Suddenly, the blacksmith shop erupted in a burst of fire. The explosion was so sudden that Zhang Ping thought his end had come and that he was in the afterlife once again. To his amazement, one of his latent abilities activated. A mark on his chest glowed, absorbing the heat that would have incinerated him and channeling it directly into his system. When the fire subsided, Zhang Ping found himself unscathed, which confused him at first, but the pain in his chest reminded him of what had happened, confirming it wasn't a hallucination. With this, he quickly used his appraisal skill on himself, and surprisingly, his growth value had increased again, leading him to deduce that this was due to unlocking a new ability. But the most astounding realization was that he could now use his growth value to enhance his existing talents. This meant that as long as he continued to awaken new abilities, his growth potential was virtually limitless. This was an incredible advantage, as growth value is generally fixed at birth, making Zhang Ping an extraordinary exception. And his newly unlocked ability, the Fire Devourer, was far from useless, as it allowed him to convert the elemental energy of fire by swallowing the flames and storing the energy within his body. This energy could then be released at will until the storage was depleted. But that being said, Zhang Ping had already reached level 3 that morning and consumed level 3 gems, so the question now was why the effects of the gems had activated so late. The only possible reason he could think of was that his abilities required specific opportunities to unlock their potential, and if that were the case, he needed to be mindful of when to consume these contract gems. But before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, Sister Ku returned to the blacksmith shop, and upon seeing the disaster, she hurried over to Zhang Ping with a worried expression, asking if he had thrown the red snake scale into the furnace. If he had, then he might have been hurt by the explosion it caused, and she felt responsible for not informing him earlier. But her worries dissipated when she saw Zhang Ping unharmed. She sighed in relief and assured him not to worry about the mess, as the most important thing was his health. As long as he was okay, everything was fine. But now the question was how he had extinguished the fire so suddenly, as the flames ignited by the red snake scale were known to be extremely difficult to put out. However, Zhang Ping couldn't easily share that information, so he searched for words to change the subject. Fortunately, Sister Ku's attention was captured by the material he had created. Its appearance suggested that the components had blended exceptionally well, a result that required extremely high temperatures. With this, she wasted no time placing the material into a mold and praising Zhang Ping's talent. She commented that his school must have made a mistake, as his current performance was more than enough to join one of the 3 main organizations. Speaking of which, Zhang Ping asked Sister Ku about these 3 organizations. He referred to the patrol team and the research team as the 3 main organizations but had never heard the name of the third. He wondered if it really existed, to which Sister Ku confirmed its existence but explained that no one knew its name or activities, as it operated completely out of the public eye. But leaving aside the small talk, she had heard he was here to buy equipment, so if he didn't mind, she offered him this sword they had just made. Just by looking at it, Zhang Ping could tell it was expensive. He was surprised to discover it exceeded his expectations, as it was capable of inflicting significant damage to intermediate-level beasts, leading him to ask Sister Ku how much it would cost, to which she revealed that, according to the market price of the material, it was worth 100,000. This left Zhang Ping immediately in shock because that amount of money was like 3 years' salary for him. Naturally, he hesitated to accept such an expensive gift, but Sister Ku insisted he take it as a reward for his quick progress, and thus it was resolved. She tried to excuse herself by saying she had tasks to attend to, but before that, she asked if it was really okay for a student like him not to return to school. Zhang Ping reassured her, explaining that he had already completed his graduation procedures in advance, which made her happy and allowed her to leave without worries. With that, Zhang Ping was left in charge of the shop. But that being said, even though this blacksmith shop wasn't very popular, with the commotion he had just caused, it would inevitably attract the attention of the foxes, and he couldn't allow the people here to be transformed into one. He decided to use his night tracker skill to patrol the surrounding area after dark. Soon after, night fell, and Zhang Ping found himself outside an abandoned building, where he came across a girl playing quietly. But she wasn't an ordinary girl. She was a fox monster. Surprisingly, it was the first time Zhang Ping had encountered a monster of such a low level, the same level as him. But unlike her, he was equipped with powerful gear, giving him the confidence that he could win this battle. He knew he couldn't let this opportunity pass, as the little fox had a 4-star growth rate, indicating that she would become a significant threat if left unchecked. Moreover, this might be his only chance to expose the terrifying creatures lurking in the city. If he managed to present the body of this fox monster to an authority, he might attract the attention of the higher-ups. And even though the city patrol team was completely occupied by monsters, he still clung to the hope that the research team outside the city wasn't compromised, and he could take the body there. With this in mind, Zhang Ping prepared to attack, but before he could move, ice began to materialize on his arm, freezing him in place. Then a wave of massive killing intent enveloped him, paralyzing him with fear, as a voice ordered him to stay still and demanded to know if he planned to attack a girl. Well, that concludes it for now. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hugs to everyone and see you next time.